Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on leveraging waste management for climate mitigation. It's also the launch of the Waste Atlas for us, and we are very proud of that. My name is Aditi Ramola, and I work at the International Solid Waste Association. Let me begin by starting my presentation. Give me just a second. You see my screen? Is it all? Yeah, great. So my name is Aditi Ramola, and I work at the International Solid Waste Association, ISWA for short. ISWA is a global network. It's an independent non-profit association with a mission to promote sustainable and professional waste management while also advocating for a transition to a circular economy. And if you've been members with us, you know this phrase very well. We have members from over 100 countries globally, and these include individuals, organizations, companies, research institutions, and so on, and many more. And so today I'm so honored to be moderating the session, which is also the launch of our publication with a really great set of speakers, which showcases the best of ISWA's global network. And to set the context, and a lot of our speakers will be telling you more about this, is that today the world is facing complex environmental challenges, but one thing is clear, for us at least, that sound waste and resource management is a critical part of the solution. And this can be through reducing methane emissions from landfills, or enhancing circular economy practices, improving recycling and composting, or even scaling up waste to energy initiatives. So the choices are vast and many, and the sector, waste and resources sector, has the tools to make a significant impact. For us, waste is not just a byproduct of human activity, which it is, but it is also a resource that, if it is managed correctly, can drive economic growth, it can reduce environmental harm, and support a more sustainable and circular economy. This is what we feel at ISWA. So we also state this very clearly. In the right-hand side, you can see the recently updated climate change declaration that we are going with to the COP30, the next COP that's coming up. And in today's webinar, we're going to be launching the Waste Atlas on waste management and climate change mitigation, which basically shows and maps how waste strategies can be integrated into the nationally determined contributions across 103 countries, and also highlights sectors' untapped potential to mitigate up to 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions through prevention, through recycling, improving landfilling, and energy recovery. So the waste hierarchy for those of you who are already in the sector. So the Atlas, which you see on the cover on the left-hand side, it's basically aiming to provide governments and donors with clear levels and evidence to embed waste and resource management as a cornerstone of the policies towards climate action when they head towards COP30 in Belém. And we are basically, as ISWA, building upon the momentum that we had in COP28 in Dubai, COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, where ISWA was very successfully having their own pavilion, the Waste and Resources Pavilion, and we highlighted the role of waste management in global climate strategies. So what to expect in today's webinar? I'll keep it brief because we have a good lineup of speakers. We'll begin with James Law. He's the president of ISWA, the vice president at SCS Engineers in the US, currently sitting in Kuala Lumpur for an event for ISWA's national member in Malaysia. He's also been the chair of ISWA's working group on landfills, and he has over 38 years of experience in civil, geotechnical, and landfill engineering, and he has led several successful projects globally. He's also an international certified waste manager and a board certified environmental engineer in sustainability. Welcome, James. We also have with us Alexandra Montero from AFD, who is going to talk about the report and also the broader engagement of AFD. Alexandra is the coordinator of the solid waste activities at AFD, and she has over 25 years of international experience. She's also trained as a geotechnical and geological engineer and specializes in environmental sciences, and has been leading successful solid waste management projects across Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Following Alexandra's intervention, we will have a presentation on the Waste Atlas itself from Corinne Tromsdorf, who will then set the stage for our discussions. Corinne is the executive director of the French Solid Waste Partnership, which is ISWA's national member in France. And she also brings more than 25 years of experience in sustainable water as well as waste management globally. She has led several international initiatives on circular economy, wastewater recovery, as well as greenhouse gas reduction. And most recently, I want to congratulate her once again. She was elected to ISWA's board, where she continues to strengthen global advocacy on climate issues. Finally, we also have with us Peter Samois. He will be joining us during the panel discussion. Peter is the chair of ISWA's working group on climate change and waste management, and he's a specialist in waste strategy, climate, and renewable energy. I reckon to say he also has experience of more than 25 years. He's based in the Netherlands with Harvest Waste currently, and very, very closely engaged with both national and international developments in the sector. And his work provides him with a broad perspective on the critical interfaces between waste, energy, and climate action. So thank you all for being with us today. I'm going to pass it on to James first, but I encourage you to be participating in the discussions by asking questions, by typing them in the dialogue box. We will be collecting them for the end discussion, the end panel discussion. So thank you all for being with us, and I'm passing it on to James from KL. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Law. I'm the president of ISWA, and I bring you the warmest weather from Kuala Lumpur. It's very hot here and humid, but this is a great honor to welcome you all today to the launch of the Atlas on the Waste Management and Climate Change Mitigations. This publication is the result of an inspiring collaboration led by the French Solid Waste Partnership, supported by AFD, and developed with the dedication of the ISWA climate change working groups. I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to our FSWP colleagues for their leaderships, and to AFD for its support, and to all the experts who contribute their knowledge and energy to this important milestone. The Waste Atlas comes at a critical moment. The world faces what the UN calls a triple planetary crisis, that is, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Waste management, too, often overlooked, is in fact key climate issues. While the sector directly accounts for 2 to 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, its indirect mitigation potential through prevention, recycling, and energy recovering reaches up to 20%. That is why this is so vital. It shows clearly how waste strategies can and must be integrated into the next generation of NDCs ahead of the COP30 in Berlin. At ISWA, we have long champions the recognition in our sector in global climate debates. Over the past years, ISWA has ensured a strong voice for waste and resources at the UNFCCC COPs. Since COPs 28 in Dubai and 29 in Baku, we have proudly hosted the Waste and Resources Pavilions, a dedication home for dialogues, knowledge sharing, and advocacy. These pavilions demonstrate that waste management is not just a local service, but a global climate solution. And we are determined to continue strengthening that voice on the road to Berlin and beyond. Our recent release, ISWA Climate Change Declaration, underlines this commitment. It calls for acceleration and climate resilient waste systems, the prioritization of organic waste management and methane mitigation, and the mobilization of climate finance for waste solution. We reaffirmed that improved waste and resource management is immediate, cost-effective, and cross-cutting, delivering climate benefits, public health gains, and progress on the sustainable development goals. Today, with the launch of the Waste Atlas, we take another step forward together. This tool will guide policymakers, invest to invest in waste is investing in actions. I wish this webinar every success and congratulations once again to the French Solid Waste Partnership, to AFD, and to the ISWA Climate Change Working Groups for this outstanding achievement. Thank you, and let us continue this journey together toward a cleaner, healthier, and more climate resilient future. Aditi, back
Thanks
to
a
you.
lot. Thanks a lot, James. Thanks a lot for your remarks. Thank you for joining us from KL. I'd like to now invite Alexandra to give her opening remarks and to lead us into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi. I don't know if you can see my screen. So first of all, I would like to welcome all the participants of this conference, and I would like especially to have a big thanks to ISWA and to the FSWP that worked quite well with us this publication, which we hope will help the sector to be well knowledged and well taking in charge. So as we know, even if waste sector is directly responsible for only 3 to 5% of the global greenhouse emissions, when we consider it a 100-year period calculation basis, as yes, it's okay. Okay, as Mr. Lodge just said, its direct mitigation potential is significantly higher, up to 20%, when we are also including into accounting the avoided emissions. When we know that the global waste generation is expected to rise over by 70% up to 2050, driven by the population growth and economic development, and even if the higher increase are expecting in the low and middle income countries, this potential remains largely underused in the national climate strategies. This publication will focus on a group of countries within the scope of intervention of the French Development Agency, and it's based in an internal research that we conducted in 2020 regarding the impact of waste in climate on those countries. The ones that we were working in 2020, because the intervention areas changes with the agreement of French government. This research becomes from the observation that the improvement of waste management, despite their significant effects on environmental, on climate, and the quality of life of local populations, have been relatively absent of the request expressed by our partners countries to AFD, but also to our partners, the other IFIs institutions, and which are working as we are in the low and middle income countries. So this publication highlights the critical role for the solid waste management that can play in achieving climate objectives, particularly through his inclusion in the country's development national determined contributions and the action plans. So I welcome you all again, and I leave the word to my colleagues for the presentation of this document. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. That is wonderful. Corinne, I invite you to please present the key findings and the messages from the Waste Atlas. You can present your screen now. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe Alexandra needs to stop sharing, but I'm not sure. Maybe it will work.
Yes, I do. I just see that I forget to pay presentation during the same time. But if we have time in the end, we will do a little presentation of AFD himself. Okay.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, Corinne, if you can just
Okay.
go to.
So thank you very much for giving me the floor to present the content of this publication. Just a quick word on who is the French Solid Waste Partnership. As Aditi said, we are the national member of ISWA, but we actually, our mission is to coordinate and amplify the voice of French waste stakeholders on the international stage. And we gather the whole of the ecosystem around waste management in France. That is the state and its agencies, the local authorities, the NGOs and foundations, private companies, and research and education. And our mission is to promote the implementation of waste and resources management everywhere in the world at the same time as a transition towards the reduction of waste generation and circularity. As Alexandra mentioned, this project to work on this publication builds on an existing work of AFD, and this is why you'll see some of the maps are actually focused only on 103 countries under the AFD intervention scope, whereas others will be based on some more worldwide data. Our goal was really to highlight the importance of waste management in contributing to the mitigation agenda and to raise waste management as a priority in the national strategies on climate mitigations. Quick overview, it's the publication itself is meant to be very visual and easy to read. It has a lot of illustrations and it is structured in 3 chapters. The first one is a contribution of waste management to global emissions. The second chapter is an overview on how waste is actually integrated in the nationally determined contributions, which are these reports that are produced every 5 years and in which countries actually commit how much they can do to contribute to the Paris Agreement, to contribute to that target of reaching the 1.5 degrees. Then the third chapter is actually an overview of 4 categories of actions that can be levers to reduce waste-related emissions. So that's chapter 1. How is the waste sector actually contributing to global GHG emissions? As we've heard, globally, it's about 3 to 5% of total emissions. But actually, what's interesting to look at is when you look specifically within each country, how much the waste sector contributes to the national total emissions, you see a quite wide variation. Some countries, with quite a lot of countries for which it's over 15%, and some for which it even reaches 20 to 30%. Another interesting fact is the fact that greenhouse gas emissions of what is called the waste sector are largely dominated by methane. And methane is actually triggered, methane emissions are triggered by the way organic waste is managed. And we'll see more of that later. Just want to clarify what is meant by the waste sector when we look at the previous numbers that we've looked at, which are produced by the climate community. So the climate community bases all of its reports and assessments on the IPCC guidance, which defines the waste sector as all the activities that relate to wastewater management and to solid waste management from collection to treatment, but excluding waste to energy. In the climate community, the waste to energy projects are reported under the energy sector. And the idea is that each activity has to be reported only in one sector so that they can add up everything. This is why. Now, when we in the waste practitioner community talk about waste, we typically do not include wastewater and include waste to energy should the waste services in question actually include these types of facilities. Another interesting point of context is the fact that waste generation is anticipated to continue to grow significantly under what we call the business as usual scenario. And therefore, if nothing is done, if we stay on that trend, the emissions associated to waste management will continue to significantly grow. In terms of waste generation, it's anticipated to triple in sub-Saharan Africa by 2050 and to double in South Asia by 2050. With a strong connection that we currently see between economic development and population growth with waste generation growth. So these are all elements of context. And now we're going to see a quick overview of how waste is actually integrated in the NDCs as of earlier this year when this report was written. The good news is that compared to the work that we based this publication on, which was done by AFD in 2020, we've seen a quite significant increase in the number of countries that actually mention solid waste management in their NDCs. It was less than 50% before, and it is now over 75% that actually mention it. However, only 47% actually mention specific measures, and only 38% include some quantitative targets. So we've gained some ground on the awareness level, but not quite as much on the practical measures that could be integrated in these NDCs. In that chapter 2, you'll also see a summary table that summarizes how each country refers to waste in their NDCs. The first set of columns focuses on the core of waste management. How is waste prevention, collection, treatment, and landfill practices accounted for? The second set of columns look at practices which enable to reduce methane emissions, which we've heard before are one of the critical components of the GHG contributions of the waste sector. And the third set of columns looks at energy recovery as a substitute to fossil fuel or fossil energy. And one of the things that is quite striking when we look at this table is that there are a couple of those columns that are largely underrepresented. The first one is waste prevention at source. And the second set of columns are the ones waste to energy and the production of refuse-derived fuel, which are also largely underrepresented. And I'll come back later to why. We'll focus now on those 4 categories of actions that we've identified as mitigation levers. But before we do this, I'd like to step back for just a second and just recall that the goal of waste management, the first objective is the environmentally sound management of waste, which is actually defined by Article 2 of the Basel Convention. It's all practical measures taken to ensure that waste is managed in a manner that protects human health and the environment from its harmful effects. So this is the first goal that we have with waste management. And then we look at co-benefits, such as climate benefits and energy recovery. We have 191 parties of the Basel Convention, which are bound to take appropriate measures to reduce the generation of waste to its minimum and ensure the availability of disposal facilities for ESM of waste. This is a framework that already exists, and I thought it was interesting to state this because it's not so well known that this Article 4 of the Basel Convention, which has been ratified by 191 countries, actually states this. It's about, if you look at the graphic on the right side, on the left side, which, by the way, I really want to thank RMI for letting us reuse that graphic, which comes from their Playbook 2024. It's about how building the basics is really what's the start of waste management, and then slowly progressing towards moving up the waste treatment hierarchy and including more and more circularity actions. The 4 levers that we have identified, actually, we need to remember that they need to be implemented, and they need to build on wherever each system currently stands. So if it's a building the basics, or if it's a closing the circle type of country, the type of measures to be implemented will be different. Those 4 levers are waste prevention. That can potentially be implemented everywhere, but is a very long-term objective. It has the highest potential to mitigate, though, up to 20%. The second lever is about putting an end to mismanaged waste and stop open dumping, burning, and ensure a safe final disposal for waste with engineered landfills. The third set of actions is energy recovery from waste, and the fourth, materials recovery and recycling. We've ordered these group of actions in this way, which is slightly different from the hierarchy of treatments, because they're ordered in the amount that they can potentially contribute to climate mitigation. So let's take a quick look at the prevention lever. It's, as mentioned, it can leverage up to 20% of GHG emissions when full circularity is considered. So what do we mean by full circularity? It's about implementing those 10 Rs, and you'll see that they're split into 2. The green ones, the first 8 Rs, are about reducing what could be quote unquote unnecessary production of food or consumer goods, something that would become waste too quickly. And the last 2 Rs are about recovering materials and energy to reduce fuel consumption. The objective is really to decouple waste generation from economic growth. When we look at the NDCs, not so many NDCs actually mention prevention, and those that do is really more at the awareness level. But the full potential of prevention is not yet fully harnessed by climate strategies. The second lever is transitioning from systems of open dumping, open burning to actually ESM compliant systems. So the minimum requirement is the collection of all waste and its safe final disposal to control health and environmental impact. And here we want to focus again on methane. Methane emissions from poorly managed waste represents 20% of total anthropogenic methane emissions. And so the way organic waste is managed is absolutely critical. What we propose to look at as a lever for action is to control the landfill inputs. So ensure that as little as possible of organic waste enters landfills. And the second set of actions is about improving landfill operation measures so that there will always be some organics that stay in a landfill, and so that the methane that will be produced over the lifetime of the landfill is actually captured and minimized. This is just a quick focus on a specific situation in Europe, just to be used as a source of inspiration, because it doesn't pertain to those 103 countries, but just to be used as inspiration. If all landfills in Europe were to transition from average practices to good practices, with the set of rules that are already in place in Europe, with significant organic waste diversion already in place, there's a reduction of 51% of generated emissions over the lifetime of a landfill that could be gained. The third lever of action is energy recovery. We look at 3 types of energy that can be produced: methane, that can come from anaerobic digestion or landfill gas valorization; heat and power production from waste to energy plants; and fossil fuel substitutes from the production of refuse-derived fuel. The climate benefit for this type of lever, some of it can be just the reduction of the direct emissions of the waste services themselves when they consume that energy for their own operations. But most of the time, that energy is actually sold to a third party, and in which case, the climate benefit is avoided emissions. That means that the energy produced replaces fossil energy in other sectors' GHG accounting. It will be used by someone else. And this is something very important to understand, because it induces a very low visibility for these types of actions in climate strategy. Just a quick zoom on waste to energy itself. Waste to energy plants actually are not widespread in those 103 countries that we analyzed more closely. They're mostly widespread in Europe and Asia, and a little bit in Southeast Asia, where those 103 countries are. But what's interesting to understand, and this graph actually is based on data from France, because that's where we had some data available. It's interesting to note that these avoided emissions actually can potentially exceed the direct emissions induced by the production of energy from waste in those waste to energy facilities. I won't get into more details, but happy to do that at another occasion. The fourth lever of action is ESM compliant recycling and materials recovery. In this case, again, the climate benefit is avoided emissions. It's about materials being produced that will replace virgin materials in another sector, and that will reduce the consumption of carbon, of fossil carbon or fossil energy, which would otherwise be accounted in another sector. And because it's avoided emissions, it also has very low visibility in climate strategies. Today, we have some global numbers, or actually they're quite old, from 2016, that show that recycling is still too low and should further increase. And the climate benefits for recycling actually vary really for each material flow. For plastics, it would be reducing fossil carbon consumption. For glass, reducing energy. For organics, it's about reducing fossil carbon consumption for fertilizer manufacturing. So for each waste stream and each product stream that would be recycled, it needs to be thought through. Our conclusion is that there are a few bottlenecks for bringing up waste as a priority. First of all, it's that lack of visibility, especially for those levers that tie into the avoided emissions. That would actually require cross-sectoral approach to be further leveraged. And as we know, all these cross-sectoral approaches are harder to bring together. And there's also limited access to finance. Our set of recommendation is to integrate waste management more systematically into the NDCs, including those cross-sectoral benefits, and include as practical measures the prevention of waste generation, having ESM compliant waste systems everywhere, limiting methane emissions by managing organic waste, and recovering materials and energy with that avoided emissions component. Our call to action with the report is to call national delegations to actually assess the integration of waste management in their NDCs 3.0, which will be presented in a couple months in Belém, and drive the inclusion of waste management measures in the future biannual transparency reports, which are those reports that are produced every 2 years to show progress on the actions. You can download the publication from the ISWA website or from our website, but I'm sure ISWA will also share the link in the follow-up email.
Thanks very much, Corinne. If you stop sharing your screen, I'd like you to also refresh your camera because your screen is frozen. Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's a great presentation. I think you've given a good overview about the Waste Atlas to all our participants. We'll move into our panel discussion now. So I'd like, all 4 panelists to be on camera. So Corinne, since you just presented, I'd like to start with you because you've talked about the 4 levels or categories of action. You talked about the fact that you really needed to broaden the scope beyond the traditional IPCC waste sector definition, and you explained exactly why and how, but can you again reiterate why this was important and why you wanted decision makers to use this broader perspective to look at waste and also unlock financing as well as drive meaningful climate outcomes, specifically moving towards Belém in a couple of months?
Yeah, thank you, Aditi. It's actually today only direct emissions are really considered in the climate strategies because this is what is reported on. Each sector reports on its own emissions. A lot of national reporting actually now has started including those indirect emissions so that we could start working on the supply chains and having that trickle effect of getting other actors to also implement low carbon strategies. What we are trying to trigger with that broadening the scope of the waste sector is similar. It's about saying we cannot just look at the direct emissions of waste management. We have to look at those other emissions that can be avoided in other sectors because it's a huge lever. And the waste sector can contribute to that, but it will also need finance to be able to access financing in order to deliver on that. And so this is where it ties to climate financing, where today, if you're not targeting direct emissions, it's very difficult to access climate financing. And we would like to instigate this change of mindset and open so that climate financing becomes open to those avoided emissions type of projects.
Thanks very much. People will, of course, say, the issues with double counting and so on, but it'll have to be a very nuanced approach to those indirect emissions as well. But yeah, good start. I hope IPCC is going to be listening as well. Peter, I want to move on to you and bring you into the discussion. Firstly, thank you for all the amazing work you do in leading the Climate Change Working Group. It's a great publication. How do you think that the waste sector can ensure greater visibility and recognition with national climate strategies, which people are working on, and frameworks like the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, as well as Article 6 and carbon markets, which we talked about at COP28, if I remember right. What role can ISWA play in this, and especially our working group, because we're the ones leading the climate discussion?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Aditi. Yeah, before I go into the question, I also first want to thank Corinne and the team for this publication. I think that this in my opinion was always missing. We were talking about NDCs already a long time, but we didn't have the overview or the situation this clear up to now. So this really comes at a good moment. It also shows the publication, of course, that that it is starting. Waste management is in the NDCs, but we can also see that there is a lot of work to do. There are a lot of gaps that we also from ISWA and together we should work on. I think going into the question, Aditi, talk about the visibility. Again, I think these numbers are already mentioned now 3 or 4 times, but the waste sector contributes only to 3 to 5% directly to global greenhouse. We keep on repeating this, but has up to 20% mitigation potential. That is, but that can only be harvested more or less if we really go into the that the avoided emissions are also taken in account, and also the levers that Corinne presented, prevention, recycling, energy recovery, that these are the mechanisms that should make this work. But this is very important, and what we see up to now, talk about visibility, how are we seen at this moment, is that we are only seen as the 3 to 5% of direct greenhouse gas emitter, and we have to move away from that. That is what we from ISWA is our main goal, and that we're really showing the potential of waste management. How can we do that as ISWA? We do that via providing evidence, presenting case studies. We help with capacity building, and very important that we are present at these global platforms like COP to also interact with the decision makers and people also. I don't know if they like the word, to be educated what waste management can do in this. But in the end, it is always up to the countries to put waste management in their NDCs. We can help them with that. There are examples, and we're also looking at, if you talk about climate markets, the official climate markets, the Article 6, what you already mentioned, mechanism. I see that as also the way to get also the avoided emissions in the system. That's it, I think, for what we can do. I think you also mentioned our working group. I think that climate change is a topic in every working group within ISWA. We have 10 working groups, and the role of our working group is also to connect also these activities in the different working groups, also with for example, the high-level platforms where we can showcase these examples coming from the other work groups. So I'm not taking all the credit for, as our working group, we have to work together within ISWA, but also within other organizations to really get our message where it should be. That's it for now.
Thanks a lot, Peter. That's comprehensive. And yes, everyone's welcome to join our working group. We do a lot of exciting things, especially around COPs and so on. I want to bring in Alexandra because, AFD has really supported with the work that you did in 2020, and then we took it over this year. The Waste Atlas is highlighting the 4 key categories, as Corinne called it, 4 key levers for reducing waste-related emissions. In your view, as AFD, since you're working globally in these 103 countries, which of these are the most immediately actionable for low and middle income countries who struggle the most with getting financing and so on, and what barriers you see them facing and how can they be overcome?
Thank you, Aditi. It's a very interesting question and quite tricky one, to be clear, because in fact we are facing a question or a issue where the majority of low and middle income countries, local authorities are not structured to manage waste, and waste it's a competence of local authorities, to be clear. So in terms of financial and in terms of technical autonomous matters, they don't have the targets and the skills to do it. So plus, each country and each local has a unique context. So a solution that would be adapted to one country would not probably be adapted, or to one place will not probably be adapted to another place, even in the same country. I have some examples in countries that we worked where in one area it's adapted, and in the same country in another area it's not adapted. So to help that, and to help that in a concrete way, I think first of all we must have a good knowledge of the context and have an idea of the ability to have an immediate impact on the skill of the international environmental of waste treatment. As Corinne just said, what we present in the atlas, it's not totally connected with the triangle of solid waste management as it presented by and defended by European Union. It's sometimes a little bit different, because sometimes to be able to manage the issue where almost part of domestic wastes that are impacting quite high level, in at least in direct impacts by methane. By the way, methane it's not really being considered totally in a correct way as the impact of the waste, because methane in terms of it's the third waste is the third responsible for the level of methane, and methane has a short term of life. So when you consider it 100 years, in fact, you are diluted the impact, which is much higher, 80 times much higher for the short time of period, which is the ones where organic wastes are being disposed, burned, and not environmentally sound managed. So, in fact, to advance on that, I think we need to be back to your question. I think we need to reduce these impacts to have several ideas in mind, which is improving sectorial regulation and the strategic planning in terms of the countries themselves, that goes through appropriated sectorial political policies. It's also developing finance. I heard a lot of questions of difficulty access to finance. In fact, Corinne explained quite well why this access was difficult, because waste is just considered 3 to 5% for climate change impact for the moment, which is not really the real effect if we consider all the points that were already discussed. And when the decision makers look to a project that goes for energy or transportation and another that goes for waste management, they choose the one from transportation or energy. So in fact, the access is quite difficult. And in terms of IFIs like ourselves, we are mandated by requirements from the government. So if the target in the public policies are not fixed, are not within the marks of engagements of the countries, finally, even the requests for IFIs are lower than we could expect, taking into account the number of consequences, direct consequences, not only in climate, but also in environmental and energy. So financial, fiscal models, but also strategic planning, including solid waste management, training for all stakeholders, because there's a good lack of, enormous lack of training and capacity building, and also raising citizens' awareness of the consequences of mismanagement of wastes. And all of that, I would say, if I go quite quickly and if I have the time, I think I did not use the 5 minutes for the moment.
Sure,
if I have the time, I present very quickly what we try to do ourselves as IFD. So in order to show you.
If you can present your screen, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. You can see, okay. So in fact, what we do as term of intervention is an holistic intervention. We try to, as much as we can, to promote an holistic intervention by structuring the sector, which means political policies supports, technical assistance, and also the share and the knowledge of responsibilities and the needs of controls on the application of these policies, in fact. The investments, for sure, which is necessary for things to go, but again, the investment needs to be adapted to the country. The capacity building, as we said, it's part of, I don't detail because you have the examples marked on, but the capacities building, it's part of almost all our projects as a support. And all the analysis of the financial model, because it's quite easy. I won't say it's easy because we just said it's not easy, but it's more easy to have access to finance for CapEx. But the issue is what happens after.
Yeah.
And if they are not capable in terms of technical and financial models to operate it after, all the CapEx is gone. Doesn't have a real effect in the long-term activities. So that's why we intervene like this. That's also why we do based our intervention principles in all these 7 principles: priorization, adaptation, choose of technology that it's easy to maintain when they don't have the knowledge at the beginning. After we can go further. Prioritizing technology and financial availability management methods, informal sector integration, because they are already working on that. And it's about 20% of the work done already, and work on the sustainability of the sector with what the aspects that I just said. I would say, just for information, that it's the goods. I can say it's a starting good news is that when we can see for IFD the amounts of the projects, we can see that it's growing up in the last years. And I think it's growing up because the requests are growing up and because the countries are also being better informed. Okay. That's for the aspect of waste. I would just say that we work IFD group, which is 3 groups: French expertise, Proparco for private company, and IFD for us. Work in 160 countries, but IFD only for public in 150. 115, and that we have about 4,000 projects in progress at the moment. I would stop there because it's not the question is not to present IFD, it's how could we advance on that. But I think it's important to see that what we are trying to do, and I must say that our colleagues for the World Bank are also trying to do the same thing. We work a lot together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, I think some members who are present here will be interested in knowing what AFD is doing. Perhaps they can leverage some of the funding their way as well. Thanks a lot. Yeah, the challenges are vast. And as you said, no solution, even within the same country, the context differs so vastly. The PPPs and everything, it's, purchasing power parity of the service providers as well as the people who are receiving the service. You can't copy paste solutions, so that's been a challenge as well that we do face. I just want to go back to Peter because we talked a lot. I mean, Corinne presented technologies. Alexandra also mentioned some of that. ISWA does as well, because we have 10 working groups working on different aspects of the waste hierarchy, from collection, transportation to healthcare waste management to biological treatment of waste and so on. From your perspective, since we are at that cross-cutting function, what potential, what technologies for material recovery can you suggest or to mitigate climate change? And do you have any, let's not say favorites, but would you recommend some that you think can make a significant difference in reducing emissions from the waste sector? A tough question for you, Peter.
Yeah, good question. I can talk probably an hour about the technologies, but due to time, I will try to keep it short. I think that, yeah, and also if we look at the report that has been published, I think you can see that at this moment, methane is, yeah, the most urgent short-term climate pollutant. So. And there you can also see the biggest win directly. So if you talk about technologies, organic waste treatment, yeah, really comes out. Talk about composting, anaerobic digestion, but also if you have the landfill gas capture. These are technologies that are already there. There's not much innovation on it. It improves continuously, but that is, I think, that you can make a huge step in mitigation of greenhouse gas. Yeah. Secondly, of course, also recycling. Also. Talk about glass or metals, all these types of plastics, all these types of materials can be recycled, can be collected or separated from the waste, and also has a huge potential for mitigation greenhouse gases. Of course, then you need also the recognition of the avoided emissions to get this working. And third, what I want to mention is also the energy from waste. Again, if you have done all the prevention and recycling, if we cannot use it, then recover all the energy from it. That also has a huge potential, providing electricity, providing heat, or in form of district diheating or steam, and also what we see, especially in Europe, is that also the capturing of carbon coming from the stack is now quite actual. So there's also a huge potential for greenhouse gas reduction. Yeah, I must say, I also want to bring in a digital innovation that is, I think, really important. And what you see is also that the measuring of methane leaks, also sensor-based, with satellites, but also with land systems, that really helps a lot, improving also the production of gas coming from a landfill, or to optimize these streams that are really interesting developments that could be used everywhere. And I think, but also, I will stop here because I think that we're almost at 3 o'clock.
We're on the dot. No,
Yes.
I thank you very much, Peter. And I did want to congratulate Alexandra, Corinne, you for this amazing publication. And now it's basically in the hands of everybody. We'll have to see how from today to the COP in Belém, how many decision makers we can hand it over to. So I'm really hoping that it's going to be used by national governments as well as donors in practical terms. Going back to the question about landfilling, so Corinne hasn't presented the landfilling rate per country, but there is, I mean, the second lever talks exactly about that, right? Waste under control, moving away from open burning and dumping into ESM compliant landfilling. So you can look at that chapter. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm so sorry we're cutting it here because it's at the dot of the hour. Be informed about our upcoming events through our newsletter. You can reach out to our membership manager, Ms. Ray Chui, or our events manager, Daphne, who's also online. But thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you again either virtually or in person at the ISWA Congress. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.